A massive pillar of light erupts over the Qingyang City First Academy, while the crowd watches in awe as Su Zioxing triggers a massive anomaly, proving she's far beyond the average student, and the onlookers scramble to guess if she's just hit a high-level class. But the sheer intensity of the light suggests something even rarer is at play, because a holy weapon manifests from the glow, its golden surface shimmering with angelic power, as a six-winged entity descends into the courtyard, leaving the observers speechless at the sight of a legendary epic class, with Su Zioxing standing as the center of this world-altering awakening, and the divine avatar of light looming over the school grounds, while her classmates lose their minds over her sudden, overwhelming power, though even the more composed students realize this is a total game-changer, because 3 centuries ago, humanity's reality was shattered by sudden spatial rifts. And these unstable vortices unleashed mutated beasts upon the unsuspecting world, so survivors began awakening specialized combat classes to fight back, by diving into dangerous secret realms to grind levels and master their skills, to hold the line against monsters with steel and magic, where power is strictly tiered from low up to the coveted epic rank, and stories of hidden, even more powerful classes continue to haunt the legends. Wei Dao stands tall, confident that his endless theory study will finally pay off, with the principal personally congratulating Su Zioxing for her legendary epic class awakening. But she keeps her head down, focused on working even harder to maintain her lead, and as she walks away, Wei Dao steps forward, fully ready to seize his own destiny, while she casts a quick glance back, noting that today is the day he finally learns who the true genius is. And the crowd cheers for him, expecting him to be the next big star, so the principal calls out Wei Dao's name to the waiting assembly, to see if the school's top academic can match Su Zioxing's legendary feat, as the onlookers whisper that even a high score will not guarantee an epic-tier result. Yet he does not hold back, channeling his energy into the ritual, and his hand glows with an intense, golden light as the process takes hold, causing a massive shockwave to ripple across the entire school plaza, which erupts into a blinding pillar of light that pierces the sky. But the atmosphere shifts instantly as dark clouds roll in and lightning tears through the air, revealing a terrifying, glowing skeleton emerging from the swirling necrotic purple energy, and a whole army of undead warriors follows, swarming the ritual site, while the principal stares in disbelief at the chaotic, bone-chilling anomaly. Even Su Zioxing feeling the raw, unnatural cold radiating from his awakening, and Wei Dao floats within the center of the dark vortex, grinning as he embraces the power, howling for more as the storm intensifies, leaving everyone to wonder what kind of monster he just pulled into reality. Wei Dao reaches into the swirling vortex, pulling forth a mysterious surge of dark energy, and the purple light violently expands as his hidden class finally takes physical form, dropping a single iron shovel into his hands with a resounding metallic clink, which leaves him staring in confusion at the humble tool he just summoned. So the instructor confirms the worst, revealing Wei Dao has awakened the hidden class Undead Summoner, causing the surrounding crowd to erupt in laughter at the sight of the school's top student holding a gardening implement, with onlookers mocking the absurd situation and questioning if this is really a high-tier grade. While Su Zioxing watches with a satisfied smirk, clearly enjoying his public humiliation, despite Wei Dao questioning if the system made a massive error in his class designation, yet his personal info screen reveals the true potential behind the Undead Summoner class, highlighting the SSS-Rank talent Eternal Immortality, which allows him to stack summons infinitely, making him realize he can bypass the usual summoner limitations to command a vast army of the dead. So his initial disappointment vanishes, replaced by a dark, calculated excitement for his new cheat, since the iron shovel itself holds a hidden state that grants experience for burying enemies, turning every kill into a double reward as he masters the art of efficient necromancy. Although the instructor tries to intervene, warning Wei Dao that he should not underestimate the challenge, he ignores the lecture and begins casting the signature spell of his new class, with magic circles pulsing across the ground to manifest his first loyal servant, and a standard skeleton warrior tears through the dimensional rift to stand at his side, leaving the instructor to point out that even a basic summon is still just the lowest tier of the undead. The instructor mocks the fragility of the skeleton, questioning how such a weak summon could ever be considered a hidden class, but the bones crumble instantly under pressure, proving his point about their lack of durability. While the onlookers erupt in laughter, clearly delighted to see Wei Dao failing so pathetically, yet Wei Dao just grins, hiding the massive scale of his actual power behind a facade of incompetence. As the instructor tries to wrap up the assessment, dismissing the skeleton as a low-level fluke, Wei Dao simply snaps his fingers to initiate the real sequence, and suddenly the air hums with energy as multiple magic circles ignite beneath the surface, revealing a surging wave of undead that catches the instructor completely off guard, because Wei Dao is no longer manifesting one measly minion, but an entire legion flooding the training grounds with endless rows of skeletons that dwarf the previous display, while the sheer volume of his summon puts the earlier critique to shame, leaving the student crowd in total disbelief as they scramble to process the sudden army. Since even the high-ranking observers realize that quantity has transformed into a terrifying new quality, which forces the instructor to shift his tone, frantically backpedaling on his earlier insults, now acknowledging that Wei Dao's potential is far greater than the initial test suggested. So he tells Wei Dao to recall the army, desperately trying to regain control of the ceremony, though Wei Dao keeps his true ace in the hole hidden, letting them believe this is his limit, keeping the legendary skeleton dragon tucked away as his ultimate secret weapon for later. until the sun finally begins to set after the long, chaotic day, and the awakening ceremony draws to a close, leaving everyone completely rattled by the hidden monster in their midst. The instructor drops the news about tomorrow's novice dungeon trial, where leveling up and earning bonus points for scholarships is the new priority. And the massive crowd begins to disperse while the magnitude of the next challenge sinks in, when a classmate approaches Su Xiaojing to propose a team-up for the upcoming trial. But she shuts him down cold and walks right past the guy, only to call out to Wei Dao as he walks away, so he turns around, curious about what she wants with him. And she challenges Wei Dao to a direct competition during the dungeon run, to which he just grins and shrugs off her competitive attitude, leaving Su Xiaojing fuming at his dismissive response, while Qian Zhao steps in, enraged by the perceived disrespect toward her, and Wei Dao does not even flinch as Qian Zhao tries to intimidate him with a weapon, so Su Xiaojing tries to intervene to keep the situation from spiraling further, though Qian Zhao remains focused on threatening Wei Dao with a brutal beatdown, promising him a month in the hospital if he does not watch his back. And Wei Dao simply accepts the challenge with a confident, taunting smirk, before the scene shifts to the next morning at the staging area, where the students gather at the designated trial grounds to start the exam, as the excitement builds among the participants about entering the lowest-level grassland, and they discuss the prospects of eventually accessing the higher-level secret realms. Wei Dao stands his ground as he confirms he's going solo for this trial. And Su Xiaojing accepts the challenge with a smirk, fully prepared to outperform him, while an instructor takes the stage to address the massive crowd of eager students, announcing the 8-hour trial period where leveling up 3 times is the baseline goal, with everyone listening intently to the specific point values assigned for the exam, because taking down elite, leader, or boss monsters grants massive score bonuses. So the barren grassland portal opens wide and the real competition begins, triggering a frantic rush as the students sprint headlong into the shimmering gate, leaving Wei Dao behind to watch the chaos with a surprisingly calm demeanor, though he decides it is finally time to stop stalling and join the fray, stepping firmly into the swirling vortex to begin his own dungeon run, where he arrives at his destination only to realize the teleportation scattered them all. Suddenly catching the sound of an unexpected piercing noise echoing through the field, seeing a grassland marmot that seems far too adorable to be a dangerous threat, but the creature immediately lets out a deafening, high-pitched screech, forcing Wei Dao to cover his ears in sheer disbelief at the intensity, while the tiny beast launches itself toward him with impossible, blinding speed, and Wei Dao takes a direct hit to the face as the creature latches on. Staring wide-eyed as the marmot bites down hard with surprisingly sharp teeth, realizing his first dungeon encounter is definitely not going to be a walk in the park, Wei Dao finally rips the clingy creature off his face, shouting at the grassland marmot for its cheap ambush-style tactics, and delivers a heavy, high-velocity kick that sends the beast flying, watching it tumble through the air with a pathetic, high-pitched squeak, though he realizes just how close he came to getting bitten. So he snaps his fingers to initiate a far more permanent solution, calling forth a dark aura to begin the ritual of undead summoning, as a small legion of skeletal figures rises from the ground, manifesting 20 Tier 0 skeleton mages ready to serve his command, and Wei Dao points toward the target to let his new army take over, while the mages instantly launch a volley of searing fireballs, engulfing the poor marmot in a massive, unavoidable explosion of flames, leaving behind nothing but a drifting spirit as the creature expires, while a system notification confirms the successful kill and the experience gain, but Wei Dao sighs because 10 measly experience points are not enough to level up, so he gestures for his entire undead army to spread out and farm, commanding them to sweep the surrounding field for any other monsters, while back at a tea house, 2 observers discuss Wei Dao's performance, questioning if he really has what it takes to dominate this trial, yet the other remains perfectly confident in his school's elite representative. Back at the academy, one observer casually drops a bomb about old Wang having an epic class, causing his colleague to spit out his tea in absolute disbelief, because hearing about a hidden class is enough to stop anyone in their tracks, and the informant insists that these elites are just warming up before the real carnage begins. While out in the field, Wei Dao's army of skeletons continues to vaporize the local wildlife, turning the entire prairie into a chaotic, explosive playground for his undead summons, where every fire-wielding skeleton makes short work of the squeaking marmots, and Wei Dao lounges in the grass, absolutely loving how easy this grind feels, soaking up the steady stream of experience points flowing directly into his account, marveling at how this hidden class lets him rake in power without lifting a finger. But he decides to stop being lazy and finally pulls out his enchanted iron shovel, walking over to a fresh corpse to test out a bizarre burial theory, and he begins digging a hole with rhythmic practice motions, tossing the defeated creature into the dirt like a seasoned gravedigger, wiping his brow after the manual labor and preparing for the potential loot. Wondering what kind of hidden treasures this unconventional method might unearth, when a system window pops up to announce his strange haul, displaying a collection of oddities like a coarse bracelet, grave incense, and corpse oil, and Wei Dao examines the loot with a confused expression, unimpressed by the underworld junk, but he shrugs it off and decides to test the items out on the spot anyway. A massive surge of experience points floods his system, triggering a level up that officially bumps his rank, and the notification confirms he has hit level 2, realizing that grinding for stats is surprisingly simple work. He He decides to experiment further by uncorking the jar of corpse oil, pouring the viscous substance onto his hands to trigger a stat boost, feeling his strength and agility spike as the buffs take hold. Notifications spam his screen with repeated attribute gains, leaving Wei Dao stunned by how quickly he is scaling up. Checking his status window to see the temporary nature of these buffs, so he heads back out to the field to keep up the burial grind, but the system warns him that his undead mage count is dropping, suddenly interrupted by a violent tremor shaking the ground nearby. An aggressive horned wild boar charges out from the brush, easily shrugging off the attacks from his summoned skeletons, revealing itself as a level 3 elite monster that outclasses his minions. Letting out a deafening roar as it locks onto its target, stampeding toward him with lethal speed and intent, and Wei Dao realizes he has been spotted in the open, turning to sprint for his life as the beast closes the distance. The horned wild boar thunders across the field, forcing Wei Dao to deploy a massive wave of ghost fire, which slams directly into the charging beast to halt its momentum, buying him just enough space to scramble away from the impact zone. Before he immediately starts chanting an incantation for more undead reinforcements, surrounding the elite monster with his skeletal army to limit its mobility. As the horned wild boar roars in defiance at the encroaching summoners, Wei Dao pelts the target with relentless bursts of magical fire, wearing down the beast until it finally collapses in a cloud of dust, leaving the elite monster lifeless on the scorched earth, and the system chimes to signal a successful kill. Granting Wei Dao a piece of rare boar leather armor, which he inspects with a satisfied grin, equipping the new gear and summoning his trusty iron shovel before he moves in to bury the fallen elite, clearing the immediate threat from the grassy plains while noting the drop rates are slightly lower than expected. But then his eyes catch 2 rare skill books floating in the loot, revealing the potent ghostfire and summoned skeletal boar spells. So he realizes his luck just turned around in the best way possible. Wei Dao wastes no time absorbing the new skill books, feeling the surge of dark power as the system confirms the spells. He immediately channels the energy to conjure a new undead ally, and a skeletal boar rips through the rift with a deafening roar, showing off its savage crash skill and solid tier 0 stats, clearly pleased with the boost to his farming efficiency. But a sudden disruption in the distance catches his attention, where he spots a group harassing Qian Zihao near a fallen turtle elite. The aggressors demand to know by what right he claims their kill, though the arrogant blonde noble just laughs at their lack of power, swinging a golden sword that carves through the air with ease, and the 2 attackers are sent flying back from the sheer force, leaving the elite monster carcass vulnerable in the wake of the clash. Before the noble prepares to finish the job for his own gain, suddenly finding his path blocked by Wei Dao's summoned skeletons, which unleash a barrage of dark magic that detonates on impact, forcing the blonde noble to reel back in pure confusion, while Wei Dao levels up from the chaos unfolding before him, and the noble screams in fury, accusing Wei Dao of stealing his prize, so Wei Dao just shrugs off the accusation with a sarcastic grin as the battle escalates. The blonde noble lunges forward, unleashing a massive golden sword strike directly at Wei Dao, but Wei Dao reacts instantly, throwing up a desperate barrier to intercept the incoming slash, while a formation of skeletal mages materializes behind him to bolster his defense, absorbing the brunt of the golden energy in a blinding explosion of magical light, and Wei Dao exhales, realizing his summons barely cushioned the lethal blow in time. Watching as onlookers panic, convinced his fragile skeleton army is about to crumble under the pressure, though Wei Dao ignores their fear, channeling his dark energy to prepare a brutal counterattack, manifesting multiple summoning circles that erupt into a pack of spectral bone-armored beasts, commanding the creatures to initiate a savage charge against his opponent, so the noble tries to brush off the threat, mocking the seemingly weak undead summons. Only for his golden sword to clash violently against the charging spectral boar's iron-hard skull, leaving the noble reeling in disbelief as the beast lets out a deafening, reality-warping roar, and the sheer force of the collision sends the noble flying back through the air, landing hard on the ground while the skeletal pack relentlessly pursues their target, trampling the earth with rhythmic, heavy steps that shake the very foundation of the dungeon. Until the noble collapses, struggling to catch his breath as the pressure mounts, and one of the skeletal beasts pins him down, its massive jaw snapping inches from his face, leaving the arrogant attacker broken and completely overwhelmed by the swarm, while the terrified spectators struggle to comprehend the sheer power of this necromantic display, and Wei Dao stands over the fallen noble, demanding he finally back off and leave Qian Zihao alone. With the noble finally backing down, Wei Dao turns his focus to his remaining allies, and the group beats a hasty retreat, leaving the battlefield to the victor, so Wei Dao gives a mocking salute as he revels in his newfound dominance. But his attention shifts quickly toward the massive turtle carcass left behind, yet a sudden violent impact against the barrier forces him to pivot, as a massive wave of liquid slams into the area, catching him completely off guard. Revealing a level 5 dividing slime boss emerging from the wreckage, and Wei Dao realizes he has stumbled into a much higher tier encounter than expected, while the boss immediately starts spraying acidic bubbles to melt everything in its path, so Wei Dao channels his own necrotic energy to counter the incoming wave, firing off a blast of ghostfire to intercept the midair projectiles, but the corrosive liquid hits the ground, hissing as it eats through the dungeon floor. And Wei Dao knows he has to keep his distance or risk being dissolved himself, as the slime continues to bubble and churn, preparing another lethal discharge, so he summons his full legion of skeletons to swarm the creature, and the undead army launches a volley of attacks to suppress the boss's aggression. Yet the acid spray is relentless, quickly burning through the bones of his frontline minions, and Wei Dao watches in frustration as his standard skeletons fail to hold the line. So he calls forth his spectral boars to provide the necessary brute force, while the boss remains unfazed, continuing its relentless squelching assault against his forces. The relentless assault forces the dividing slime to shatter into dozens of smaller pieces, and Wei Dao celebrates the early success before realizing the boss is just getting started, pulsing with raw energy as it prepares to weaponize its own fragmentation. Because the divide skill triggers, flooding the battlefield with an army of miniature acidic projectiles, forcing Wei Dao to stand his ground against the incoming swarm, who mocks the creature for thinking numbers give it an advantage since the necromancer specializes in exactly that kind of overwhelming force, dodging the incoming bubbles while ordering his forces into a new defensive formation, commanding the skeletal boars to hold the front line at all costs. Where the beasts take the brunt of the corrosive damage, while the skeletal mages move into position to unleash a concentrated barrage, saturating the area with fire magic to incinerate the divided slime swarm, burning every last segment until nothing remains of the boss, prompting the system to confirm a level up and a boost to all attributes, leaving Wei Dao satisfied with the loot drop despite the low-level gear, as he gathers the fallen items scattered across the field. Pulling out a storage bag to secure the remaining spoils, and deciding to clear out the rest of the area while he still has time, but the trial abruptly ends and forces his immediate extraction from the dungeon, leaving Wei Dao caught off guard by the sudden conclusion of the event. Wei Dao teleports back to the school grounds in a flash of light, surrounded by other students who are equally confused by the sudden end of the trial. While Wei Dao grumbles about being yanked out before he could finish his farming, noticing the chatter around him as students swap tales of narrow escapes and survival, and he keeps his own counsel, hiding the true extent of his newfound power, until a familiar face spots him and jogs over with a grin, welcoming Zhang Dahai, who's practically bursting with pride over his recent progress, because Dahai is convinced that hitting level 5 is the pinnacle of achievement. Showing off his status with a confidence that borders on the ridiculous, and Wei Dao humors his friend, promising to look out for him during the upcoming exams before a woman approaches them, her presence immediately cutting the conversation short as she demands Wei Dao's attention and insists he follow her. But Wei Dao refuses to be pushed around by the campus belle, so Zhang Dahai tries to intervene only to get sent flying by her swift movement. Crashing hard against the pavement in a display of overwhelming difference in skill, forcing Wei Dao to draw his weapon and channel his energy to defend his friend, where the woman retaliates by manifesting a glowing blade to match his aggression, and the two clash in a blur of strikes that tears through the air, with Wei Dao holding his ground against her relentless high-speed assault, while she pushes the tempo, forcing him to adapt or get overwhelmed by her technique. Wei Dao taunts the girl by questioning if that attack is really all she's got, while she activates an insight spell, realizing to her shock that he blocked her at 80% power, and her own system interface confirms the truth, revealing that Wei Dao is actually level 7, leaving the campus belle speechless as she struggles to process how he surpassed her own progress, with Wei Dao seizing the opening to swing his shovel directly at her. Mocking her as he asks why she chose not to dodge the incoming strike, though he effortlessly forces her into a defensive collapse as he pins her down with his weapon, and she recovers just enough to vow that their real contest will happen during the upcoming unified exam, leaving Wei Dao to sigh over how relentlessly competitive she has become, while he acknowledges that she clearly has some real talent to have reached her level so quickly. And a mysterious observer catches the tail end of the scene, clearly impressed by the setup, as Zhang Dahai stumbles back to Wei Dao complaining loudly about the beating he just took. But Wei Dao just brushes off the blame, pointing out that Zhang Dahai was the one looking for trouble, so they finally part ways for the day, leaving the campus grounds behind them while Wei Dao heads out with his loot sack in tow, ready to turn his monster kills into cold hard cash. And he arrives at the local trading market, looking to capitalize on his recent gains, where a shifty merchant immediately latches onto him, eager to make a quick deal for his equipment, while elsewhere the campus belle is driven away from the scene in a high-end car, and her father questions her silence, noticing how visibly upset she is after the skirmish, as she stares out the window, finally voicing her deep-seated fear that she might be useless. The father can't wrap his head around how a student could possibly outperform his daughter, but the campus belle admits her defeat to Wei Dao is a reality she has to face, so her father offers to intervene and teach the kid a lesson on her behalf. Yet she stubbornly insists on surpassing Wei Dao entirely through her own efforts, and warns her father that the powerful Qian family is already gunning for Wei Dao over the incident with Zhao Kaiyou. While the father just laughs it off, already plotting to dig into the background of that troublesome boy. Meanwhile, Wei Dao is back at the market where another merchant tries to lure him into a deal. But Wei Dao is not interested in being played and pushes back against the merchant's attempt to profit from him, so he stands his ground, calling out the merchant's fake claim of being the fairest trader in the district, dropping a heavy sack of monster loot right in front of the guy to see what he's actually made of. And the sudden glint of high-level gear forces the merchant to drop the act immediately. As they sift through 25 pieces of equipment, including a rare level 5 slime sword, the merchant tries to lowball the lot at 15,000, thinking he can squeeze a quick profit, but Wei Dao is not playing around and counters with a firm demand for 20,000 instead, so the deal is struck and they shake hands on the spot. While Wei Dao suddenly realizes he needs a way to carry all his future hauls, and the merchant identifies him as a student from Qingyang First Academy, which leads the guy to suggest a specialized storage bag with 10 cubic meters of space, leaving Wei Dao to grill him on the price for such a convenient piece of kit. so they settle on 30,000, with the merchant claiming he is giving him a special discount for a new friend. Wei Dao haggles the price down to 15,000, cutting the merchant's offer clean in half, and the trader quickly finalizes the exchange with a no-return policy. So the 15,000 yuan lands right in Wei Dao's account despite his lingering suspicion that he might have been lowballed yet again. Back in the urban village, an elderly man hands over rental keys to a woman, watching her settle in while he muses on the simplicity of the transaction. Wondering why the family head is so worried about a newly awakened boy like Wei Dao. Meanwhile, Wei Dao returns to his residence, where Wu Xinyu greets him, clearly tracking his recent movements, confirming that she already knows about his top-tier performance as an undead summoner, which leaves Wei Dao visibly flustered by her sudden, intense interest. So Wu Xinyu moves in close to present him with a mysterious gift, whispering for him to close his eyes while the tension in the room spikes. And Wei Dao's mind starts racing with all the wrong ideas, until Wu Xinyu reveals a small, unassuming box which contains a relic that leaves Wei Dao genuinely intrigued, as the system identifies the mysterious bone finger, a high-quality upgrade for undead summoners, explaining that it belonged to her late husband who was also a summoner, and Wu Xinyu asks Wei Dao to investigate the truth behind her husband's death, leaving Wei Dao to weigh the massive power of the artifact against the danger he's about to inherit. Wei Dao decides the risk is worth the potential payout, accepting the relic and promising Wu Xinyu he will get to the bottom of this, reassuring her that he is fully committed to the task at hand, where she impulsively embraces him in a display of genuine relief, thanking him for agreeing to take on the dangerous investigation, and they part ways with Wei Dao heading back to test his new gear. Arriving at his private space to finally examine the artifact in peace, noting that this relic clearly packs a punch beyond its small size, so he grips the bone finger tight and triggers its unique power, activating his undead transformation while energy surges through his frame, and a massive cloud of necrotic smoke fills the room, manifesting the transformation at the cost of a steady experience drain, leaving him feeling physically empowered even if he looks like a walking skeleton, which he finds strangely amusing as he surveys his new form, until he realizes the transformation might have changed more than just his body, discovering that the promised stat boost has completely failed to materialize, prompting him to panic and demand an immediate revert of the effect, because he refuses to walk around looking like a glorified pile of bones, and he manages to cancel the skill just before he loses his mind. Concluding that this ability is a massive resource drain best saved for absolute emergencies, Wei Dao is still catching his breath when a sudden knock interrupts the silence, and he demands to know who is lurking outside his door, ignoring the lack of an immediate response as the handle begins to turn, so he stands ready to confront whoever is testing his patience at this hour, but the door swings open to reveal a mysterious white-haired elderly man, who introduces himself as the neighbor while Wei Dao reflexively throws a punch, only for the old man to block the strike with effortless precision, showcasing a level of speed and control that clearly dwarfs Wei Dao's own, and the newcomer laughs it off, casually dismissing the hostility as a simple misunderstanding, praising Wei Dao for his reflexes before vanishing back into the hallway, leaving the confused kid standing alone in his doorway wondering what that was about. While he tries to parse the old man's cryptic mention of a young miss, as the morning sun rises and the day of the trial results finally arrives, drawing a massive crowd to the central plaza where the leaderboard is about to update, because today is the day everyone finds out who dominated the latest trial, and students gossip about who took the top spot while the atmosphere crackles with tension, until Wei Dao arrives and gets cornered by peers questioning his rapid level 7 jump, forcing him to downplay his boss-killing achievement as a lucky streak against smaller mobs. But the official announcement blasts over the speakers, confirming Wei Dao as the undisputed champion, and the revelation leaves Wu Xinyu absolutely floored as the system logs his impossible kills. Rumors fly through the crowd about Wei Dao's secret dungeon exploits and his massive level jump, while the announcer confirms the rankings, pinning the spotlight directly on Wei Dao's recent performance. And Wu Xinyu confronts him, acknowledging his strength but refusing to back down from their rivalry, so Wei Dao just shrugs off the tension and declares he's ready for the next challenge, as the official warning echoes through the plaza, reminding everyone that the unified exam deadline looms, with Wei Dao immediately shifting gears to grind for more loot while the rest of the students linger, scanning the market boards to see which monster parts are fetching the highest prices right now. In deciding the current commission rates for bull horns and goblin hearts are not quite worth the effort, so he pivots to the orc lair, hoping for a more profitable haul to fund his next breakthrough, crossing into the portal with the confidence of someone who has already outpaced his entire class, entering the dungeon zone that feels just right for his current power level, and the magic circle flares, dragging him deep into the heart of the monster territory. Though he steps out into an environment that looks nothing like the standard orc lair he expected, finding himself in a dense, quiet forest that feels like a trap waiting to be sprung, where he recalls the textbook warnings about pack hunting gnolls and stays alert for any movement. But the ambush is already in motion as a wolf-like beast lunges from the shadows, forcing Wei Dao to react instantly by hurling a blast of dark energy to intercept the incoming claws. And the gnoll screams in rage, its massive form crashing toward him with feral intensity, while Wei Dao counters the assault with a precision strike that sends the beast reeling back, until the system notification pings, confirming the kill and adding the gnoll to his growing list of victims. Wei Dao notes the textbook warning about gnoll pack behavior, confirming his suspicions, and a fresh wave of wolf-like beasts storms the clearing to overwhelm him. So he commands his summoned skeletons to prepare for an explosive counterattack, ordering the undead minions to detonate right in the heart of the approaching pack, which turns the entire group of gnolls into a mid-air fireball of destruction, triggering a flood of system notifications as the experience points roll in for each kill, leaving nothing but a pile of smoldering carcasses scattered across the forest floor, and Wei Dao grabs his shovel, ready to start the cleanup process immediately. Burying the remains with professional efficiency to harvest whatever loot remains, gathering the glowing orbs of essence that rise from the earth 10 minutes later, while the system inventories his haul including rare skill books and bottled corpse oil, and Wei Dao pauses to examine a newly acquired insight spell book, marveling at his luck since these items usually cost a small fortune to purchase, realizing this haul just saved him a massive amount of gold for his future training. So he channels the gathered experience directly into the skeletal boar, consuming the collected essence to initiate a sudden and powerful evolution. As the boar's frame expands and shifts under the surge of raw necrotic energy, wrapping the summon in a dark, swirling aura of transformation, and the skeletal boar emerges upgraded to beast general grade with significantly boosted stats, now standing as a formidable E-rank summon that makes the previous version look like a toy. Wei Dao officially dubs his boar Peppa, and he pulls out grave incense to force a forced rank up for his skeleton mage, while the magic takes hold and triggers a sudden breakthrough, forcing the skeleton into a violent, swirling evolution until the creature re-emerges as a boss-grade mage with massive fireball capabilities. So he christens this new powerhouse Aints before turning his attention to the target, clapping his hands to signal the start of the next phase. And Wei Dao charges toward the orc lair with a grin, ignoring the confused mooing of the orc guard standing watch, because a massive explosion of fire instantly wipes out their front line, leaving the remaining orcs stunned by the sudden, brutal assault as the shockwave sends bodies flying into the brush, and Wei Dao unleashes his full summoning army to swarm the survivors, while the orc warriors roar in a desperate attempt to counter, so Wei Dao pelts them with rapid-fire dark magic orbs, obliterating the orc forces during a relentless 3-hour combat session, until the system confirms his first-class advancement and breakthrough are complete, granting him a new talent that transfers damage to his summoned beasts, which effectively makes him nearly immortal as long as his summons remain standing. And Wei Dao finally admits that digging up graves is a pretty twisted way to win. A projectile tears through the clearing, catching Wei Dao completely off guard. And the force of the impact sends him spiraling backward into the trees, his chest plate taking the brunt of the strike but leaving him gasping for air, knowing full well that without his new damage-sharing talent he would be dead. Wei Dao shakes off the hit and realizes the transfer actually kept him in the fight, while a massive purple aura boar crashes into the fray with a deafening roar, and the skeletal boar slams into the terrain, clearing a path through the debris. Wei Dao activates his insight spell to scan the new threat looming over the battlefield, revealing the minotaur Vaesen, a boss-level earth sharpshooter with terrifying stats. As the beast prepares another lethal strike that nearly connects with Wei Dao again, the summoner barely evades the follow-up. His mana flaring with a dark, vengeful light, Vaesen charges forward with ground-shaking steps, intent on ending this confrontation quickly. So Wei Dao grins, deciding that the boss has exhausted his best opening move, and the skeleton mage makes his move, eyes burning with a cold, spectral fire, stepping into the light to intercept the enraged minotaur, while the projectile flies wide, missing Wei Dao as the tide of battle finally turns, because the skeletal boar and the army of skeletons swarm the boss from every angle, trapping Vaesen in a relentless barrage of magical attacks that hem him in. And the beast finds himself cornered by the very summons he tried to ignore, as Wei Dao watches the trap snap shut, ready to claim his next victory. Wei Dao dodges a sudden strike, only to find his path littered with the scattered remains of his own fallen summons, realizing with a jolt that this entire area is a graveyard for his skeleton army, and the realization hits him that he has walked straight into a calculated trap. Ground tremors erupting around him as the environment itself turns hostile, shadows deepening in the distance, revealing glowing red eyes closing in from every side, while a voice mocks his tactical error, comparing his current struggle to catching a turtle in a jar. But Wei Dao refuses to fold, summoning his skeletal boar and a fresh line of mages to hold the line, and a horde of minotaurs charges from the darkness, slamming into his frontline with brutal force. Fireballs and axes clashing in a frantic, explosive skirmish, skeleton mages weaving through the chaos to maintain their formation, taunting the enemy as Wei Dao laughs off their attempts to break his endless supply of undead, commanding his mages to detonate their power, fire raining down on the charging minotaur vanguard, experience points flooding in as the boss-level minotaurs are obliterated one by one, Wei Dao's own level climbing in the process. And the remaining alpha minotaur bellows in rage at the summoner's sheer audacity, calling Wei Dao out for his arrogance while staring down the carnage, so the beast signals his full force to descend, and the final, desperate clash ignites between the remaining minotaurs and the relentless skeleton legion. The skeleton mages unleash a concentrated volley, drowning the minotaur front in pure arcane energy. While the alpha minotaur ignores the fodder and charges straight for Wei Dao with a lethal axe swing, Wei Dao does not even flinch, just smirks at the incoming threat, and the massive blade cleaves the ground where he stood. But the summoner has already slipped aside. A skeletal hand lunges from the dust, locking onto the boss beast's heavy weapon, pinning the axe in place while the skeleton mage forces a stalemate, giving Wei Dao the perfect opening to declare checkmate right in the monster's face. The alpha minotaur tries to retaliate with a point-blank burst of hellfire, spewing flames that light up the cavern, yet the skeleton mage tanks the heat, leaping forward to strike the boss mid-breath, piercing the beast through the chest in a blinding flash of combat. before the impact erupts into a massive explosion, triggering a system notification for the kill and boosting Wei Dao to level 13. He barely catches his breath before switching gears, ready to display his own specialized skills, summoning a barrage of dark projectiles that hang in the air like predatory stars, grabbing the loot drops from the fallen, a stash of rare incense and a battle axe. With a greedy grin, he gathers his newly acquired wealth as if it were candy, promising that he's been waiting for this moment to really test his power. Then he launches the dark projectiles, each one whistling through the air with deadly intent, pinning the ground around an unseen target to cut off any possible escape route, leaving a mysterious, silver-haired warrior staring down the trap in complete disbelief. Wei Dao mocks the silver-haired warrior, laughing off the idea that his forces are drained, while the skeleton mage army stands ready, glowing with an ominous, dark energy. And the taunted warrior demands to know how a mere Tier 1 summoner controls such a legion. Wei Dao just grins, countering with his own question about how a beast gained human-like intelligence, turning his focus to the kill as he orders his minions to swarm the target. They surge forward in a wave of purple shadows, closing the distance in a heartbeat. The warrior tries to warn them not to celebrate yet, bracing for a counterattack. As the skeleton mages ignite their palms with hellfire, turning the cavern into a furnace, raining down explosive fireballs on the beast, who stands his ground against the incoming barrage, everything detonates in a massive roar of flames, swallowing the area in thick, blinding smoke. Yet the warrior emerges from the debris, carving a path through the earth with sheer speed, launching a concentrated arrow of the earth that pierces through the chaotic battlefield. Smashing through the defensive line with a deafening crack, Wei Dao barely registers the threat, eyes widening as the ground begins to shatter. Golden lances of stone erupt from the floor, turning the battlefield into a jagged death trap. Skeleton mages are knocked back by the impact, their formations breaking under the relentless assault. Peppa the Beast lunges from the chaos, closing the distance to Wei Dao with lethal precision. Roaring as he commits to the strike, forcing Wei Dao to rely on his summon's agility, the silver-haired warrior realizes just how fast his opponent is, caught off guard by the sheer pace and Peppa's strikes, turning the tide of the skirmish in one swift, brutal movement. The minotaur tries to hold his ground, but the pressure is becoming way too much. A massive shockwave tears through the air, sending debris flying in every direction. Blood sprays as the impact lands square, leaving the beast reeling and gasping for air. Then the skeleton mage charges in, launching a point-blank fireball at the staggered target. Claws sink into the minotaur's chest, burning through his defenses with cursed heat. Energy surges through the wound, lighting up his frame like a dying star, and the final explosion consumes everything, leaving only a crater where the monster stood. Wei Dao watches the smoke clear, mocking his opponent's pathetic struggle. Checking the body, he notes the creature's stubborn vitality is actually quite impressive. Deciding he'll drag this mess out to the authorities rather than burying it here far above the dungeon, the sky remains clear while the military unit waits on edge. Soldiers whisper among themselves, confused as to why no one has emerged from the gate. Suddenly, a massive magical seal flares into existence. Tearing a hole in the air, blue light floods the area, signaling an immediate and powerful extraction. Wei Dao steps through the portal, surrounded by his legion of skeleton mages. The waiting guards scramble in shock as the figure emerges from the void. Identifying the summoner, they realize they are looking at the man himself, Wei Dao, but their confusion turns to horror at the sight of the rows of unconscious students. Explaining the situation, Wei Dao clarifies that an intelligent boss orchestrated this entire trap, and the soldiers realize they've been outplayed by something far more dangerous than expected. Wei Dao tosses the defeated Minotaur boss onto the ground, dismissing the soldiers' concern, confirming the beast's identity for the squad leader while the corpse lies motionless. The officer identifies it as a level 16 boss and asks if anyone else was involved. Wei Dao ignores the inquiry to ask about a nearby facility for dungeon rewards, pointing toward a specific office building. The soldier gives him directions to head straight over, leaving the students in the care of the military. Wei Dao departs the scene entirely, walking into the exchange office to find a clerk waiting to process his haul. Wei Dao dumps a massive pile of bull horns onto the counter for an appraisal. Staring at the sheer volume, the clerk is visibly floored by the amount of loot. Confirming the materials are high quality, she values the entire batch at 320,000 currency. Wei Dao wastes no time holding up his phone to receive the massive payout, watching the notification pop up. The transaction for 320,000 yuan is finalized on the spot. Feeling flush with cash, he sets off toward the trading market to hunt for gear. Walking through the streets toward the commercial hub, he keeps his eyes open for upgrades, hoping to avoid any run-ins with the shady profiteers he encountered last time. A familiar face suddenly pops up out of nowhere, blocking his path with a grin. It's the same persistent merchant from before, immediately trying to corner him for a deal. Wei Dao brushes him off with a wave, clearly not in the mood for his sales pitch. Following him anyway, the merchant keeps pushing his wares despite the cold shoulder, refusing to engage. Wei Dao keeps walking, determined to ignore the guy's persistent hustle. Wei Dao dangles a rare skill book and evolution potion right in front of the guy, catching the profiteer's attention as he halts in his tracks. Realizing the items are top-tier goods, the merchant practically salivates over the potential value, pulling the items back with a smirk. Wei Dao asks him for a price. Calling his bluff on earlier claims that he would not buy, the profiteer drops the act and unveils an entire arsenal of high-grade gear. Weighing the potential haul, Wei Dao pretends to consider the offer for the equipment, scoffing at the price tag. He mocks the merchant for trying to overcharge on the axe, spinning the negotiation. Wei Dao suggests a direct trade for the potion and book, laying out the math. He puts the combined value at 200,000. Shaking hands on the deal, the trade is finalized without any further argument, warning Wei Dao to be more careful with his inventory. The merchant pockets his new acquisitions, calling him a business genius. The guy watches Wei Dao walk away, leaving the street behind. Wei Dao heads off alone while the profiteer lingers, wondering about the mysterious origins of these items. The merchant contemplates his next move. Hidden in the shadows, a new figure tracks Wei Dao's movements from a distance, muttering about a grudge for some past offense. The stalker prepares to strike, summoning a blade of pure energy. The attacker readies a lethal ambush, launching toward his target. The assailant closes the gap in a blur, reacting to the sudden presence. Wei Dao spins around to face the threat. Shouting about a bounty from the giant family, the assassin charges forward with a blade. Wei Dao pivots and summons his skeleton minion to intercept the incoming steel, grinning like a maniac. The attacker commits fully to his lethal strike. Blood sprays across the alleyway as Wei Dao creates an opening with a swift counter, standing his ground. The guy in the hoodie finds himself outmatched by a superior combatant. Wei Dao taps him on the shoulder, shattering the assassin's confidence in an instant. Staring in disbelief, the attacker realizes his target is far more dangerous than the contract suggested, drawing an epic tier dagger. Wei Dao delivers a decisive blow through his opponent's defenses. Slicing through the assassin, the blade drops the target instantly to the ground. Collapsing onto the pavement, the assailant gasps as his life force fades away, staring up at his killer. The assassin finally accepts his defeat. System notifications confirm the death of a Tier 3 level 39 elite. Wiping his blade clean, Wei Dao notes he never wanted to use this specific weapon on a person, heading deeper into the dark. He leaves the corpse behind in the silence. Glowing loot orbs appear over the body, containing rare materials and strange currency. Picking up the items, Wei Dao finds a stack of bizarre cash among the grave grass. Examining the bill, he notices the absurd denomination and realizes it holds significant power. Systems flare to life as the underworld currency triggers a hidden shop interface. Holographic shelves materialize in front of him, displaying an array of mysterious goods. Scanning the legendary options, Wei Dao discovers items priced at over 800 billion units. Prices for legendary gear like the Monarch Scepter hit hundreds of billions in the shop. Wei Dao stares at his measly single bill and realizes he is nowhere near that bracket yet. Deciding to play it smart, he pools his energy to focus on immediate upgrades. Choosing the skeleton guard as his first priority, he channels his power into the summon. Arcane circles blaze beneath the creature as a massive transformation begins. Statistics for the skeleton guard skyrocket as it adopts a heavy defensive posture. Watching the evolution unfold, Wei Dao confirms the tank's potential is exactly what he needed. Pushing further, he forces the creature to break through its current power ceiling. Armor and dark robes manifest over the skeleton as it hits Tier 0 Beast General status. Seeing that massive 3000 Constitution stat, Wei Dao can barely contain his excitement, christening his new tank Little Qiang. He watches the creature let out a deafening roar, pulling out a rare potion. Wei Dao offers the boost to his newly evolved companion. The skeleton accepts the liquid, letting the magical properties soak deep into its frame. Power surges through the skeleton mage as it gains massive strength and agility spikes. Confident in his new MVP, Wei Dao decides it is time to call it a night. Far away, a scout from the Qingyang City Su family observes the aftermath of the fight. Reporting back to the villa, the scout prepares to deliver the shocking news to his superiors. Sitting at the dining table, the Su family head listens to the confirmation of the assassin's death. Disbelief clouds the elder's face as he struggles to grasp how a mere kid pulled this off. Questioning why Wei Dao would bury the body, the family head demands answers that no one has. Dismissing the need for bodyguards, the Su elder insists his daughter can handle herself. Mention of a past defeat by Wei Dao fuels his desire for a calculated academic revenge. Orders are finalized to keep monitoring the kid until the family decides the perfect time to strike. The next day, Wei Dao teleports straight into the heart of the dangerous orc lair, recalling his previous forced retreat. He vows to finally uncover what lies on the other side, launching himself into the fray. He wastes no time pushing deep into enemy territory. A massive gathering of monsters chants in the shadows, guarding a dark, ominous ritual site. Peering from the tree line, Wei Dao spots the source of the overwhelming magical presence. A minotaur priest leads the ceremony, boasting terrifying stats and control over the entire tribe. Realizing he was lured away on purpose, Wei Dao understands the true motive behind the trap. Sensing an intruder, the minotaur priest alerts his followers to a presence in their midst. Orders are barked out to hunt down the human before the sacred ritual is finished. Waves of hulking warriors charge forward, weapons ready to crush the uninvited guest. Calling upon his army, Wei Dao summons the skeleton general to hold the line. Dark shields manifest in the air, absorbing the initial brunt of the brutal assault. Metal clashes against bone as the undead tank refuses to yield an inch of ground. Counterattacks begin as the skeletal legion advances under their master's tactical command. Explosions rock the clearing when the skeletons unleash their full combat potential on the horde. Watching his followers fall, the minotaur priest roars in fury at the unexpected turn of events. Stepping into the chaos, the boss prepares to unleash his own devastating power against the intruders. The minotaur priest tries to channel a final prayer, but Peppa cuts him off before he can even finish a single verse, catching him off guard with a savage strike that sends the boss flying. Slamming him into the dirt as his defensive posture completely crumbles, desperately scrambling away, the priest finds no shelter from the relentless beast, until a final decisive blow ends his reign over the tribe for good. Popping up the system notification that Wei Dao has raked in 20,000 experience, pushing his level straight to 14 with a satisfying chime. Scanning the remains for loot, Wei Dao finds a glowing tome left behind. Revealing the advanced meditation technique as a rare drop, holding a genuine treasure that could change his entire training trajectory, he immediately triggers the learn command to integrate the skill. Watching the system confirm the mastery of this new power, settling into a lotus position to test the technique's true potential, surging with energy as his stats skyrocket by 100 points across the board, realizing this meditation method is leagues better than mindless grinding. And with the boss cleared, Wei Dao portals back to safety, fast-forwarding to several days later in the city, where he continues to refine his internal energy in preparation for the big day, finally unlocking the inner fire needed to dominate the upcoming unified exam. Wei Dao arrives at the stadium, fully fired up to unleash his real power, where the massive arena awaits all the hopeful candidates for the unified exam. As students flood into the test grounds, buzzing with nervous energy about the challenges ahead, the proctor addresses the crowd, officially kicking off the high-stakes assessment, announcing a terrifying lineup of creatures ranging from goblins to boss-grade minotaurs. And Liu Ming steps up first, visibly eager to pick his targets. While the commentator calls his name over the loudspeakers, Liu Ming launches himself into the center of the arena with an explosive jump. Shouting his choice to tackle 10 level 15 monsters and 1 level 15 boss, the system instantly materializes the horde of minotaurs to face him. Crimson Eye armor materializes around Liu Ming as he channels his energy. Glowing with a fierce red aura that signals his intent to dominate, drawing a sword he bought for a fortune, he prepares to carve through the ranks. Onlookers gasp at the sheer cost of his gear, noting the heavy investment in his performance. Wei Dao watches from the sidelines. Clearly annoyed by the mention of that overpriced blade, Liu Ming strikes, unleashing a lightning-fast assault directly into the heart of the enemy, tearing through the Minotaur formation with brutal efficiency and blinding speed, landing with crushing force as the shockwaves ripple across the arena floor. He obliterates the last of the group, leaving nothing but dust in his wake. And the scoreboard flashes a massive 161, setting the bar for everyone else including Su Xiaojing. The arena shifts focus as Su Xiaojing steps forward to make her move, drawing a glowing, ornate blade that pulses with celestial energy, declaring her intention to take on 5 level 20 goblin bosses at once. Spectators murmur in disbelief at the sheer difficulty of her chosen challenge. Liu Ming watches with a smirk, recognizing her attempt to one-up his previous score. System notifications confirm the spawn of the goblin horde as they flood the arena. Ferocious roars echo across the field, while the monsters charge toward their target. Su Xiaojing unfurls radiant wings of light, dominating the space above the fray. She channels her power, preparing to strike down the incoming wave, unleashing a massive arc of holy energy that cleaves through the air. Golden light descends upon the goblin group with overwhelming precision and speed. The impact scatters the monsters instantly, clearing the entire pack in one move. Students in the audience erupt in shock at her ability to instant kill level 20 bosses. The announcer confirms a record-breaking score of 300 points for her performance. Cheers roar through the stadium as the crowd celebrates her overwhelming display of strength. Wei Dao turns toward her, acknowledging the challenge as he prepares for his own turn. Academy officials whisper about her hidden class and the unexpected talent she displayed. The lead instructor notes the shift in expectations for the remaining high-ranking students. Officials discuss the implications of such high scores for the rest of the exam, and the announcer turns his attention toward Wei Dao, ready to see if he can keep pace. The Academy officials trade jabs, arguing over whether the exam limits can even hold a candidate like Wei Dao. And with a smirk, he steps up to the mic, clearly relishing the spotlight, inviting the crowd to watch as he prepares to shatter their expectations, turning his attention toward Su Xiaojing to pitch a request that feels more like a power play, promising to go all out for the Su family's benefit if she just plays along, while the surrounding students whisper in disbelief at his blatant lack of shame. He brushes off the criticism, tossing out a challenge to Su Xiaojing for a duel if she wants to call him out, kicking off the action with a sudden dash across the arena floor, closing the distance in a heartbeat to make his final demand known, boasting that he intends to take on 100 level 20 slime bosses at once, leaving the announcer visibly shaken by the sheer absurdity of that number, as students in the stands start shouting, convinced he is just going to collapse from exhaustion. The officials beg Wei Dao to reconsider his plan, but he is already locked in, claiming the only reason he is not fighting 200 is simply because the venue is too small, forcing the instructors to hide their faces in frustration at his overwhelming arrogance. Yet they finally signal for the trial to begin, letting him have his way. A massive magic circle erupts across the stage as the summoning sequence initiates, filling the arena with a literal sea of hostile slime monsters. Wei Dao channels his dark energy, igniting his hands with purple flame, and calls forth his undead army to face the swarm head-on. The summon manifests a terrifying beast, pulling the crowd's focus instantly. Students in the stands are losing their minds over his high-tier beast summons. A barrage of acidic projectiles fills the air as the slimes launch their counterattack. Frontline skeletons raise their shields, successfully neutralizing the caustic venom before it spreads. Backline mages unleash a coordinated volley of fire, burning through the slime ranks. Explosions ripple across the arena floor as the first wave of monsters is vaporized. Peppa enters the fray, weaving through magical sigils to hunt down the remaining targets. The skeleton general joins the charge, carving through the slime horde with brutal precision. Every strike tears through the gelatinous bodies, leaving the monsters no room to retaliate. Massive blasts continue to clear the field, turning the battlefield into a literal inferno. Skeletal warriors mop up the survivors, showing no mercy to the remaining level 20 bosses. Observers are forced to admit that the slime army never stood a chance against such power. Su Zioking watches with narrowed eyes, finally acknowledging the true scale of his combat capability. Wei Dao raises his arms, channeling a final surge of energy to finish the job. The entire arena lights up in a blinding flash, obliterating the last of the horde. A system notification confirms the mass defeat of all 100 level 20 slime bosses. Academy officials can barely believe what they just saw, struggling to process the historic result. The announcer formally declares a perfect score of 900 for the impossible challenge. Cheers erupt from the stands as the students celebrate his total domination of the trial. And even his harshest critics are left seething as he walks away with the victory. One of the competitors is losing his mind over the perfect score. Meanwhile, a contact approaches Wei Dao to offer her support. He voices his deep concern that the Qian family might target his relatives. She listens intently, waiting to see what he actually needs from her. Requesting an immediate escort for his family, Wei Dao promises to return the favor. Agreeing without a second thought, she gives him the green light. Gratitude overcomes him as he pulls her into a quick, impulsive hug. The gesture does not go unnoticed by a nearby rival who erupts in pure rage. Night falls over the city while he remains focused on the mission. Shadows stretch across the residential district as he returns to his base. Sitting down at his computer, Wei Dao checks the latest exam results. The login screen for the provincial system glows in the dim room. A sudden, persistent knocking interrupts his search for information. Walking away from the desk, he heads straight for the front entrance, hand hovering over the lock. He wonders who could be visiting so late. Throwing the door open, he finds his parents and little sister waiting outside. The younger girl immediately complains about how long he took to answer. Seeing them safe and sound, his face lights up with genuine relief. Ushering the group inside, he notes how quickly they traveled after his call. Settling into a chair, he gets ready to handle whatever trouble comes next. The little sister stares at the screen in complete disbelief. Wei Dao's perfect exam score is locked in at rank 1 for the entire province. Nanjai walks in and absolutely loses his mind over the massive accomplishment, teasing his sister about the results. Wei Dao plays it off like it was nothing. She's not having any of it though, already swearing to crush his records later. Mom and Dad chime in with pride, asking where he plans to take his talents. Mado Professionals University is his pick. A decision he shares with his parents, reassuring them. Wei Dao explains that the Su family will handle their protection. Dad places a hand on his shoulder, trusting him to keep the family safe. A warm, final group hug cements the plan before he heads off to school. Arriving at the sprawling campus, Wei Dao takes in the new environment. Stepping onto the grounds, he announces his arrival as a new student. Holding his official admission letter, he looks ready to dominate the next chapter. Upperclassmen watch him from the sidelines, clearly intimidated by his aura. Nanjai shows up right on time, joined by a beautiful new student named Nanjai. The surrounding seniors immediately start fawning over how gorgeous she looks. Nanjai steps in to offer her assistance with the heavy luggage. Wei Dao just sighs, watching his buddy try way too hard to impress her. Setting off to tour the campus, the group leaves the entrance behind. Another student catches up to the trio, struggling to keep pace with the rest. Pei Qian introduces himself to the group, flashing his official admission letter to everyone, though the mood turns awkward when someone mispronounces his name as a total unlucky joke. Senior student gathers the fresh recruits, ordering them to follow his lead across campus. Observing the newcomer, the senior realizes the guy has a surprisingly dense aura despite his appearance. Activating an insight spell, he decides to dig deeper into the kid's actual combat potential. The system scan reveals Pei Qian is a hidden class blood sacrifice priest at level 11. Realizing the rarity of that class, the senior can barely contain his genuine surprise. Pei Qian brushes off the praise, revealing he has a buddy with an undead summoner class. They exchange banter about how powerful their respective abilities are while walking. Reaching the dormitory area, the group learns that housing assignments depend on district rankings. District 4 is where their guide currently resides, showing just how high the bar is set. Checking in with Elder Qin, the senior reports that the new recruits have finally arrived. Demanding their admission letters, the elder prepares to finalize the living arrangements. Letters from Naiquan, Wei Dao, and Nanjai are laid out for inspection, confirming Nanjai's identity. Elder Qin turns his attention toward the trio. A key for the prestigious District 1 villa is handed over, marking an elite room assignment. Pei Qian loses his cool, questioning if the elder made a massive mistake with the room key. Getting scolded for his insolence, he panics while Wei Dao and Nanjai stand by. The official assignment confirms Pei Qian is stuck in room 66 while the others get the villa. Realizing the massive disparity in their housing status, Pei Qian completely loses his mind. Pei Qian spots a mystery girl and immediately tries to drag Wei Dao's attention toward her. Realizing it is actually Su Ziojing, he starts fanboying over her presence at Mo University. The guys approach her while Pei Qian struggles with his heavy gear. Stepping up with his best charm, Pei Qian tries to introduce himself to the beauty. She ignores him entirely to ask Wei Dao about his dormitory assignment. Getting brushed off ruins the mood for Pei Qian, who can't believe his luck is this bad. Nanjai watches the scene unfold, noting that she clearly has eyes only for Wei Dao. A new figure approaches them, catching the attention of the students. Wei Dao asks the mysterious woman to identify herself, introducing herself as the new instructor for the summoning department. Wang Xiaoman makes her presence known. Hearing that Wei Dao was the top scorer in the province, Wang Xiaoman gets right in his face. She teases him with a playful flick to the forehead, clearly flustered by the sudden physical contact. Wei Dao tries to maintain his composure. She drops a reminder about the upcoming orientation party tomorrow before turning to leave. Waving goodbye, the instructor exits while Wei Dao remains standing there. Nanjai immediately calls him out for enjoying that interaction a little too much. Mocking him for being just another man with wandering eyes, she walks away. The sky darkens as a strange, ominous energy gathers in the distance. Purple flames erupt into the night, signaling a dangerous magical disturbance. Watching the spectacle from the wooden path, the group realizes something significant is unfolding. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the dean recognizes the ruins pose a major development. Sprinting toward the office, he decides this discovery requires an immediate report. The name of the ruins echoes in his mind as he processes the potential gain. Charging forward, he fixates on the possibility of securing massive campus points for his department. Night falls over the university grounds while the dean prepares his urgent update. Inside the office, the dean calmly evaluates the promising aptitude of the incoming freshman class. His quiet evening shatters when a frantic subordinate bursts in to deliver the news, slamming his hand on the desk. The dean demands the exact coordinates of the discovery. Hearing that the ruins are beginner level and located nearby, the dean relaxes his stance. He decides to turn this into a practical training exercise for the new arrivals. Rescheduling the orientation, the dean orders the event move to the site of the ruins. His subordinate accepts the new plan and heads out to finalize the logistics. Morning sunlight breaks over the horizon as the students begin their journey. Crowds gather in the vast fields surrounding the newly emerged ruins. Instructor Wang Xiaoman greets the assembly of students waiting at the site. Wei Dao stands among the crowd, observing the arrival of the school officials. Wang Xiaoman wastes no time teasing Wei Dao about his lack of sleep. The dean steps up to the microphone to address the massive gathering, announcing a special incentive. He promises 100 campus points to every student present. Excitement ripples through the student body as they realize the value of the rewards waiting in the vault. Dean Wang Yue keeps the hype rolling, telling the freshmen how lucky they are to witness this event. He explains that a beginner-level ruin popped up right next door and a scouting team is already on the scene. Students chatter excitedly among themselves, clearly loving the prospect of an impromptu field trip. One guy asks if they'll get to go inside, but a sharp reality check comes back. That's a death sentence. This student breaks down the core difference between the usual dungeon crawls and actual secret realms. He clarifies that secret realms are not just game maps, but fully realized independent worlds. Another peer adds that from an outsider's perspective, even our own blue star counts as a secret realm. Dungeons are just messy scraps of those realms drifting in the void, filled with mindless, respawning monsters. The distinction is vital because while dungeons are common, ruins are the real deal once these ruins manifest. They do not just vanish until they have been stripped clean. Explorers usually go in for the loot, grabbing gear, scrolls, and skill books. However, the real prize is the core fragment that anchors the ruin in our reality. Shattering that core is the only way to clear it, but doing so makes the entire ruin collapse. The group keeps debating the mechanics while the purple haze of the portal looms ominously behind them. Suddenly, the portal shifts. It turns out that anyone caught in the fog gets dragged inside automatically. Alarm bells go off as the scale of the threat becomes clear to everyone. Panic starts to set in as they realize the beginner label was a massive understatement. The dark energy surges outward, expanding rapidly toward their current position, ordering a full-scale retreat. The students scramble to get clear of the encroaching void. It is too late for some as the shadows lash out and begin dragging them into the ruin against their will. Instructor Wang realizes this is not just a simple malfunction, because someone is actively sabotaging the ruin from the shadows. Wei Dao struggles against the dark tendrils that have him pinned, and he disappears into the void just as his classmates watch helplessly, pulling him completely out of their reach and into the depths. Landing hard on the dusty ground of a new, desolate dimension, Wei Dao realizes he's been forcibly teleported into the ruin's heart, scanning the horizon for his missing team but finding only isolation, trudging through the wasteland to find a way out of this nightmare. When a massive armored insect erupts from the earth to intercept him, forcing Wei Dao to immediately pivot to a defensive stance against the threat, dodging the creature's strike as it tears through the landscape, activating his insight spell to scan for any exploitable weaknesses, revealing a Tier 2 elite mother bug with stats far beyond a beginner ruin. So he braces for an immediate, high-stakes confrontation with the boss, barely staying ahead of the creature's relentless charging assault. Calling upon his own undead summons to even the playing field, and ordering his legion of skeletons to swarm the mother bug, forcing the massive insect to defend against the overwhelming numbers, while his skeleton army unleashes a barrage of fire to suppress the elite target. The mother bug finally buckles under the relentless assault, and Wei Dao cheers on his summons to finish the job for good, commanding the skeleton legion to keep the pressure high with non-stop attacks. As the undead swarm launches a coordinated fire barrage against the beast, triggering a massive explosion that seals the fate of the elite monster, while a system notification confirms the successful kill and a hefty experience boost, leaving behind a glowing trail where the creature once stood, which reveals a high-tier siege battle blade with devastating armor-breaking stats, though Wei Dao suspects that a monster of this level drops more than just a blade. So he pulls out a shovel to start digging for hidden rewards, until his efforts strike gold in the middle of the dunes, revealing a rare plant bearing golden shimmering fruits, which he harvests to see what secret value they hold, causing the plant to burst into floating stacks of underworld currency. And Wei Dao is visibly thrilled by the unexpected payout, realizing he's stumbled into the perfect spot to farm for cash, as he quickly stores the new blade and his earnings in his inventory. Before calling his army to march deeper into the ruin for further exploration, but just as he turns to leave, a mysterious stranger watches him from the distance, and the observer breaks into a cold sweat while tracking Wei Dao's progress. Two students wander the desolate ruins, wondering why they have not crossed paths with a single soul, and their conversation is cut short by the sound of heavy footsteps closing in behind them, causing one of them to spin around and question who is encroaching on their territory, only to face a massive, glowing-eyed attack bug lunging straight for their throats, while the beast snaps its serrated mandibles with a terrifying, wet crunch, leaving the terrified duo to scramble back and identify the creature as a dangerous bee-bug. So they turn and bolt across the sand as the monster charges with lethal intent, screaming at each other to stop wasting breath and just keep their legs moving. Meanwhile, an observer watches the chaotic pursuit from the shadows, recognizing the runners as students from Mo University, and he wipes his brow in relief, genuinely happy to have finally located someone in this wasteland. Yet the fleeing pair is still desperately crying out warnings to anyone nearby, as the relentless bug tears up the earth in its pursuit of the terrified students. However, the observer's eyes light up with greed at the sight of the rare siege monster, declaring it his personal source of underworld currency, and he sprints past the panicked students, leaving them wondering if he has lost his mind before he signals his summoned skeletal army to intercept the charging threat. So the undead legions clash with the bug in a burst of dark energy and fire, forcing the surviving students to pause and marvel at the raw strength of the summoner, as they realize with a shock that they have just met a fellow summoner class member. While the victor stands over the defeated remains, collecting the piles of dropped loot, the mysterious summoner frowns at the meager payout, clearly unimpressed by the loot he just farmed, but a sudden tremor beneath his feet forces him to stop and reevaluate the situation, and he pivots toward the horizon, sensing something much larger than a single monster approaching, where a swarm of bugs is tearing through the landscape, leaving only carnage in their wake. And the sheer scale of the incoming horde makes the ground tremble under the weight of thousands, which leaves the summoner realizing that a high-level brain bug is likely coordinating this entire assault, while two terrified students watch the incoming tide of mandibles, knowing they have nowhere left to run. So the summoner does not hesitate, slamming his palm into the earth to weave a complex, glowing magic circle, and from the rift emerges Peppa, a massive beast general-grade summon that immediately tears across the battlefield, leaving the students slack-jawed as they realize the guy they thought was crazy is actually a powerhouse. And they scramble to keep pace with Peppa, desperate to stay within the protection of the summoner's wake, shouting for the summoner to wait up as they sprint across the dusty, bug-infested ruins, just as the monstrous swarm closes the distance, snapping their pincers at the heels of the fleeing pair. But Peppa does not slow down, slamming into the leading wave of bugs and crushing them into red mist. And the summoner rides atop his beast, cutting through the swarm like a hot blade through the dry earth, complaining loudly about the relentless pursuit, wishing he could just get a break from the constant fighting. Yet he keeps his eyes sharp, analyzing the movement patterns to confirm his theory about the hive mind, realizing that these bugs are too organized to be wild, which means a mastermind is definitely directing them, until another group of students from Mo University spots the chaos from afar, witnessing the summoner's display, and they can only watch in awe as Peppa plows through the swarm, acknowledging the summoner's sheer speed and dominance. Screaming a warning as the massive swarm closes in, the rider urges his beast forward, with the Mo University students finally processing the sheer scale of the incoming insect tide, and they watch in disbelief as the horizon turns into a shifting, clicking wall of chitin. So Liu Yu abandons any pretense of safety and mounts a gale wolf to make his escape, yelling for the other two survivors to jump on and ride for their lives with him, while he smacks the wolf's flank to goad the beast into a desperate high-speed retreat, speeding away from the carnage, leaving the two stranded students to face the swarm alone, ignoring their cries for help because Liu Yu refuses to let himself be dragged down, and the abandoned pair realize they are completely on their own against the encroaching nightmare. Drawing his bow with shaking hands, one student decides that if he dies, he fights, unleashing a volley of glowing arrows into the dense mass of approaching insectoid horrors, striking the front ranks but failing to even dent the overwhelming numbers of the swarm, when a sudden, unseen strike catches Liu Yu squarely in the back mid-gallop, knocking him off his mount and sending him sprawling face-first into the unforgiving dirt. With his desperate flight cut short, Liu Yu scrambles to regain his footing in the dust, but the insect horde finally reaches the fallen group, their serrated pincers snapping in hunger, dragging the screaming Liu Yu down under the weight of a dozen skittering, bladed limbs, and the sound of the swarm consuming everything in its path echoes across the ruins, until the scene shifts to the relative quiet of the restricted ruins entrance at night, where Dean Wengyue and the other brass receive the grim report that the swarm is loose. Dean Wengyue demands a full explanation for the security collapse at the ruins, insisting that this breach was not just some random tactical error but a coordinated conspiracy, forcing the others to confront the reality that they are dealing with a deliberate sabotage, as the table draws links to the CO incident from a month ago to prove a pattern, where foreign races suddenly materialized in dungeons across 18 different cities, leaving hundreds dead in their wake as these entities systematically hunted down human targets. And now there's enough evidence to pin these coordinated attacks on a single organization, prompting the group to demand the name of the shadow entity behind the violence, identifying the culprits as the notorious 10,000 Races cult, with a sharp strike to the table signaling that enough is finally enough. As the order comes down to hunt down these vermin wherever they hide, planning a live nationwide broadcast of their execution at noon tomorrow, While everyone at the meeting scrambles to mobilize their forces against the threat out in the field, a lone scout races across the plains toward the encroaching danger, cloaked in a dark aura and moving with desperate, unnatural speed, before he narrowly dodges a massive, charging beast erupting from the underbrush. Barely keeping his footing as the terrain shifts into a mysterious, lush environment, recognizing the sudden appearance of an oasis in the middle of the desolation, where the trees are crawling with strange, glowing insected parasites, and he realizes something is watching him from the shadows of the canopy. The scout stares down the creature in disbelief, quickly activating an insight spell to reveal its stats, confirming it is merely a low-tier venomous larva. Yet the beast lunges forward with a glowing, lethal bite, narrowly missing the scout as he scrambles for his life, before he pivots and crushes the parasite with a heavy shovel, landing a quick kill that nets him a single point of experience, which is an insulting reward for such a desperate struggle, though he realizes he can harvest something more valuable from the corpse, planting the remains to sprout a tree-bearing golden currency. Causing his eyes to light up with visions of massive wealth, and he immediately summons an army of skeletal minions to farm the grove, pointing them toward the trees to maximize his harvest, while the sun begins to set over the desolate, dangerous horizon, where a bloodied woman collapses on the dunes, begging for her life before a cold, mysterious warrior looms over her with a drawn blade, demanding the location of Nanjai and Pei Kayan. And then he strikes her down without a second of hesitation, tossing the body aside while sneering at her pathetic weakness, then walking away, disappointed that the trail to the two geniuses has gone cold. Our hunter is already counting his chickens, dreaming of the 50,000 currency payout, but he stumbles onto a patch of strange, freshly turned dirt in the middle of the ruins, dropping to his knees to investigate what looks like a series of buried graves. Grinning at the prospect of finding hidden loot underneath the soil, he rips into the ground with everything he has, only to pull out the slimy, glowing corpse of a venomous larva, letting out a frustrated scream at the total lack of actual treasure while wiping the disgusting, glowing residue off his hands in pure annoyance. A sudden, blurred shadow flashes past him, making him spin around to find the source of the strange movement, where he finds a pair of simple leaves resting in his hand. Looking out over a massive, organized field of identical burial mounds, wondering who on earth would waste their time planting such a bizarre garden, just as a squad of skeletal figures emerges from the trees to surround him, each of them channeling crackling magical fire in their hollow palms, forcing him to draw his blade and prepare for a fight without any warning, as the entire grove becomes a battlefield for his survival. While in the background, the skeletons continue their automated harvest, raking in piles of currency that keep their master grinning with absolute greed, until a system notification interrupts the party by announcing the death of his summoned mages. The system alert forces Wei Dao to realize his summoned mages are being systematically wiped out, so he rallies Peppa and his remaining undead squad to investigate the disturbance at their position. Rushing toward the source of the chaos where a dark presence waits in the shadows, only to find an eerie silence hanging over the grove instead of the expected combat, which is shattered by a high-speed projectile hurtling straight toward his skeletal guardian, who manages to deflect the lethal strike just in time to avoid total destruction, as Wei Dao readies his own weapon and demands the hidden intruder reveal their identity. Stepping out from the darkness to confront him with a glowing blade drawn and ready, revealing a grinning Bai who clearly views the provincial top scorer as nothing more than prey, and Bai mockingly introduces himself to Wei Dao while surrounded by his own blazing skeletal minions, claiming his earlier attack was just a clumsy accident that he deeply regrets, but Wei Dao is not buying the act for a second, keeping his guard up against the stranger. While Bai tries to manipulate the situation by suggesting they team up to find the exit, urging Wei Dao to follow close behind him if he wants to survive the trek, though Bai whispers a death sentence under his breath as he turns his back, leaving Wei Dao to sense a sudden, dangerous shift in the aura hanging over the clearing, and forcing him to quickly calculate his next move before the situation spirals completely out of control. Because without warning, Bai launches a devastating void shatter slash directly at his chest, catching Wei Dao off guard and landing a critical hit that leaves him coughing up blood, as the true colors of the 10,000 Races cult member finally come to light in the aftermath. Bai gloats over his handiwork, clearly reveling in the terror of his latest victims, while Wei Dao stares him down, refusing to let the cultist's arrogance go unchallenged. And Bai boasts about his masterpiece, only to realize that his target is still standing, so he summons a massive void shatter beast to finish the job once and for all, watching with a twisted grin as the creature charges toward the wounded provincial top scorer, unleashing a massive arc of energy that threatens to cleave the entire battlefield in two. Yet Wei Dao plants his feet, raising his shield to intercept the incoming wave of destruction, which crashes against his guard with enough force to threaten his very survival. Though Bai expects an easy victory, his confidence begins to waver at the sight of resistance, and the void shatter beast roars, doubling down on its relentless, crushing assault, closing the distance with terrifying speed despite the heavy debris scattered across the ground, while Bai follows up with a precision strike aimed straight at his opponent's vitals, forcing Wei Dao to parry the blade while simultaneously holding back the charging beast, until the sheer pressure sends Wei Dao flying backward from the impact of the collision, and the cultist presses the advantage, ready to deliver the final, lethal blow to his prey, but Wei Dao refuses to yield, summoning his own spectral vanguard to turn the tide, as a massive orb of concentrated energy erupts from his ally to counter the cultist's onslaught. Forcing Bai onto the defensive behind a shimmering barrier of his own design, while the explosion tears through the void, finally shattering the beast and the cultist's ego, and the system confirms the kill, awarding Wei Dao a massive experience bonus for the victory. Bai watches the flames with genuine concern as the explosive power proves far stronger than anticipated, and Wei Dao hits level 20, triggering a massive stat boost that changes his entire baseline. Plus a system prompt pops up to finalize the second advancement task for his undead army. So Wei Dao officially advances to Tier 2, watching his skills and stats skyrocket in real time while his character sheet reflects the new power level, confirming his transformation into an elite leader because every single one of his summons has evolved alongside him, gaining their own Tier 2 power. So he checks the system interface to see how his core talent has shifted. Finding that eternal immortality now lets him detonate corpses with a brutal new explosive power, and he tests it out on a nearby target, proving the destruction is more than effective, while he unlocks a farming mode for Dirge of the Departed, gaining a shovel for corpse-based resource collection, and he marks a fresh kill as his first test subject for this new, gruesome planting process, leading to a time skip as 15 minutes pass in the blink of an eye. Until a strange, glowing plant sprouts from the grave of the fallen enemy, and the fruit ripens instantly, revealing a powerful skill book ready for collection, so Wei Dao harvests the loot, discovering the legendary S-rank summon Void-Shattering Swordsman Scroll, and he immediately consumes the book, eager to add this high-tier soldier to his roster. Plus the system confirms the successful acquisition of the S-rank skill. While he channels his energy to manifest the new summon onto the battlefield, and the Void-Shattering Swordsman appears, boasting boss-grade stats that dwarf his previous minions, so Wei Dao admires his new elite warrior, clearly impressed by the visual upgrade he just unlocked. A sudden ambush breaks his focus, forcing Wei Dao to whip around toward the threat, and he barely registers the venomous spider before it lunges with lethal intent. Narrowly dodging the strike as the creature unleashes a wave of corrosive purple energy, which tears through the landscape with terrifying speed, leaving Wei Dao stunned by the monster's ability to devour his initial spell entirely, so he immediately signals his skeleton squad to swarm the perimeter, and the undead minions rush forward to engage the Tier 3 boss, only to be met by a devastating counterattack that rips through their ranks, forcing Wei Dao to retreat as the battlefield turns into a chaotic meat grinder. But the Void-Shattering Swordsman steps up to bridge the gap, drawing a massive blade that crackles with raw blue spectral power, and the clash between the two titans sends a shockwave rippling across the area as the swordsman pushes his strength to the absolute limit, colliding with the spider's own blast in a blinding explosion of magical force, which creates just enough of an opening for Wei Dao to mount Peppa for a charge, and the trio launches a coordinated assault against the distracted beast, cutting through the residual energy as they close the distance, while Wei Dao activates his insight spell to strip away the spider's defenses, finally revealing the boss's true stats and massive power level to the system, and he prepares to deliver the killing blow while the enemy is still reeling from the impact. Wei Dao screams at Peppa to dodge, narrowly avoiding a lethal strike as the beast snaps at his heels, and he signals his skeleton summons to unleash a massive magical barrage, which erupts into a dual-wielding firestorm of pure destruction, forcing the venomous spider to deflect the incoming projectiles, until the entire area is consumed by a massive, scorching detonation, leaving only a cloud of thick smoke and debris in its wake. Where Zhang Hai and his crew find themselves completely surrounded by siege bugs, desperately trying to hold the line against the relentless insect tide, while Zhang Hai snaps at his teammates about his depleted spirit reserves, angrily snapping back that his fire dragon spells are useless against this many enemies, though a sudden, massive explosion in the distance catches their attention, prompting the group to abandon their current position and make a run for it. As Wei Dao and Peppa continue their high-speed pursuit of the boss, mocking the creature's resilience while closing in for another strike, and the sheer force of their momentum tears through the local terrain, though Wei Dao pauses in frustration as his insight spell struggles to pin down the boss, revealing the venomous spider Empress's absurdly high stats to his system interface, which leaves him questioning how he can possibly overpower such a monster. Yet he rallies Peppa to keep charging forward into the heart of the danger. Zhang Hai and his allies scramble toward the source of the distant, massive explosions, while the ground shudders under the weight of an unseen combatant, noticing a wall of skeletons blocking their path and forcing them to halt, though an unidentified male watches the incoming destruction with growing panic, seeing a pack of summoners and a monstrous boar tear through the enemy lines. As the sheer intensity of the clash forces everyone to scramble for cover, yelling for his companions to clear the path before they get caught in the crossfire, then veering away from the main road to avoid the encroaching siege bugs, signaling his frustration at the chaos unfolding all around their position, yet pointing out that the incoming force is actually doing them a massive favor, witnessing the explosive power of the boar as it obliterates a cluster of enemies, leaving the battlefield carved up by the brutal high-speed assault, making the unidentified male realize just how dangerous this newcomer really is, where the creature's fire consumes the remaining insect threats without mercy, commanding Peppa to finish off the final target and secure their path, launching the beast into a final, crushing charge toward the last scorpion, slamming into the enemy with enough force to shatter the ground beneath them, making Zhang Hai and his group stare in disbelief at such overwhelming strength, ignoring the scattered remains as the boar powers through the last of the resistance, and finally the mysterious rider emerges to claim the victory from the dust. The survivors desperately beg the big shot to let them tag along, but he's not exactly thrilled about babysitting a bunch of stragglers, while the ground behind them begins to tremble with a sinister, encroaching presence. catching his attention as he senses something massive closing the distance fast, and then a terrifying venomous spider lunges forward with a deafening, rhythmic hiss, forcing the group to scramble away in sheer panic from the towering creature, yelling at the others to stop gawking and move before they get shredded, while the spider looms over the fleeing victims, ready to claim its meal, so he channels a surge of raw energy into his palm to force a counter. Summoning a pack of spectral skeletons to intercept the spider's relentless advance, engaging the monster in a brutal clash as green miasma floods the clearing, providing the group just enough breathing room to beg for his protection again, crackling with dark power, he prepares to launch an even heavier strike, ordering the frantic survivors to hop onto his mount so they can clear out, as they scramble aboard in a desperate bid to escape the carnage. And the boar initiates a high-speed sprint to put distance between them and the beast, dumping the survivors in the relative safety of the woods, where he finally allows himself a moment to breathe after the frantic chase, leaning against a tree while his heartbeat slows back down to a manageable pace, and pulling out a pouch to inspect his hard-earned loot from the encounter. Wei Dao rips open his snack pack, ready to finally get some breakfast. But he barely gets a bite in before something bizarre happens. A random peach suddenly appears out of thin air, pinging off his blade, and he turns around, confused by the sudden high-pitched squeaking nearby, revealing a golden silk demon monkey, a tier 3 leader-grade beast watching as the monkey hops around, clearly eyeing his food. The creature launches another peach at him with startling speed, tagging Wei Dao right in the chest before he can even react. While the monkey chatters away, demanding attention with frantic gestures, looking like it's throwing a tantrum just to get a reaction, so Wei Dao holds out a biscuit, wondering if that's the real target, and tosses the snack into the air to see what the beast does, catching the trade with excitement. The monkey hoots in approval, happily stuffing its face with the cracker while Wei Dao watches, looking completely satisfied as it munchies down on the crunch. Dancing around in a victory lap, clearly happy with the swap, laughing off the absurdity of the trade, Wei Dao realizes what is up. Taking a bite of his own reward, he finds the peach is actually decent, leaving the remains of the snack pile on the forest floor and turning back to the task at hand, ready to continue his hunt. Wei Dao questions the monkey's persistence, wondering if it is still hungry for more snacks, but the creature just chatters away, clearly holding onto something special. Noticing a glowing object in its grip, Wei Dao questions if that is actually a seed, activating his insight spell to identify the rare find. The system confirms it is an S-rank immortal peach tree seed. Realizing the gravity of this discovery, Wei Dao stands stunned by the value, taking the seed into his own hand to inspect the quality, wondering how a forest monkey managed to stumble upon such a priceless treasure, while the little guy keeps making demands, expecting more treats in return. Explaining that the biscuits are already gone, Wei Dao offers an ayu instead, causing the monkey to throw a massive fit, roaring at the rejection and launching itself straight at him with surprising speed, slamming into Wei Dao with enough force to send him flying, sliding across the ground after the sudden, violent impact, summoning his spirit sword to defend against the relentless assault, slashing at the nimble attacker as it dances around his blade. Feeling the sting of the encounter, Wei Dao notes the monkey hits surprisingly hard, calling out another offer for a promissory note while keeping his guard up, watching as the frustrated beast turns tail and bolts into the distance. And left alone with his thoughts, Wei Dao muses on the sheer unpredictability of these forest dwellers. Wei Dao suddenly realizes he has a better way to handle the local wildlife. Dangling a list of high-end delicacies to grab the golden silk demon monkey's interest, listing off endless gourmet meals that sound way better than dry biscuits, extending a hand to seal the deal and promising a life of luxury outside these ruins, baiting the hook with an irresistible menu while the contract magic begins to swirl, watching the little guy lose its mind over the thought of unlimited snacks, kneeling down to start the binding ritual with his own blood. Seeing the monkey reach out to touch the droplet with eager anticipation, triggering the red energy of the master-servant pact as it seeps into the ground, and a system notification confirms the successful signing of the contract, revealing the absurdly high stats and rank skills of his new leader-grade companion, setting the terms of service to include a steady supply of steamed meat, getting interrupted as the golden silk demon monkey actually starts talking back. Listening to the creature demand more food while Wei Dao finally shows a shred of empathy, deciding to name his new pet Great Sage since it lacks any other identity, seeing the monkey accept the title with total enthusiasm, mounting a massive beast to lead the way toward the monkey's missing companions, keeping the newly named Great Sage close as they head deeper into the territory, clearing through the local threats that stand in their path. And Wei Dao gains a level up from the carnage as they continue their journey. Great Sage detects a massive gathering of humans, so Wei Dao charges toward the signal on his mount, finding a sprawling army camped out near a dangerous ruin, surrounded by hulking beasts as the soldiers nervously stand their ground, and the arrival of Wei Dao immediately catches their attention, while the local guards recognize him as the high-ranking player they heard about. Leading Wei Dao to demand answers about the chaos unfolding in this sector, which prompts the soldiers to explain the hunt for a nearby core array, though Wei Dao wonders if smashing that core is their ticket out of here, only to learn a terrifying mother bug guards the objective, having already decimated a massive force of over 10,000 soldiers yesterday, leaving a graveyard of weapons and armor in the wake of the slaughter. And Wei Dao questions why only a fraction of that force remains today, finding out the vanguard suffered most of the losses before relocating, while the soldiers prep for a coordinated second strike scheduled for tomorrow, and Wei Dao pivots to the real priority by asking for snacks, So one of the guys tosses him a pack of spicy meat strips, making Wei Dao trade a fresh peach for the spicy goods, handing over the goods to his hungry companion. As Great Sage happily feasts on the spicy prize and ignores the impending war, Monkey keeps munching on those spicy snacks, while the soldiers watch the little guy with genuine confusion, and the night stretches out in silence across the valley, under the glow of a bright, peaceful moon where one lone survivor wonders if his friends are still holding out, until the sky turns a sickening shade of crimson, signaling the sudden arrival of a blood moon. In a panic, soldier screams that the bug army has returned, just as a massive creature erupts from the earth, forcing the soldiers to drop their guard and face the threat, because the ground begins to collapse under the weight of the swarm with waves of deadly centipedes pouring out from the depths, and the survivors scramble to get away from the encroaching insects, seeing one of their own get snatched up by a pincer, while Zhang Hai desperately calls out for help. But a rider on a dark beast cuts through the chaos, as the swarm continues to multiply and flood the terrain, and the lead bugs roar while charging straight at the formation, trapping the remaining fighters in a lethal pincer movement, leaving the soldiers paralyzed by the sheer scale of the nightmare. Wei Dao activates his insight ability to dissect the threat, revealing a level 40 tank bug with insane constitution stats, and he charges his mount straight into the massive creature, while barking orders for his beast to slaughter the monster, as blue energy streaks across the battlefield to intercept, tearing through the bug's defenses with a precise strike, which culminates in a massive shockwave that rattles the surroundings, giving Wei Dao the perfect opening to unload his magic, landing direct hits that pummel the tank bug into pieces until a fiery explosion finishes off the boss-tier enemy, and Wei Dao checks his loot while the monkey snacks away, catching the falling debris from the shattered insect remains to collect the valuable monster parts scattered in the air, so he commands his other summons to hunt down the rest, near a survivor who narrowly escapes another deadly bug, before the void-shattering swordsman leaps in to save the day, slamming dual hammers down to crush the attacker instantly, as the survivor thanks her savior for the timely rescue, and the void-shattering swordsman prepares for the next incoming wave. While more tank bugs emerge to challenge the group's progress, a massive shockwave erupts as the swarm pushes back, catching the senior off guard with a sudden strike, leaving him stunned by the sheer number of tank bugs closing in, so Wei Dao deploys his entire squad of summons to intercept, ordering the team to focus fire on the approaching heavy hitters, while the skeleton reaper charges headlong into the fray, brandishing its blade to cleave through the encroaching insect lines. But Wei Dao pulls the reaper back to avoid a friendly fire explosion, just as the senior lunges toward the boss to deliver a finishing blow, triggering a violent blast that tears through the monster's defenses, though the impact sends the senior reeling from the blast radius, and he crashes into the dirt after a heavy beast slams him aside, forcing Wei Dao to rush over and check on the fallen warrior, while the senior insists he is fine and tells Wei Dao to retreat. Yet Wei Dao smirks with confidence because he has a job to do, signaling his summons to unleash their full power on the tank bugs, causing the senior to question the wisdom of a summoner fighting this deep, until Wei Dao tells him to sit back and watch the show, where his spectral knight launches forward with blinding speed and shreds the tank bug apart with a single, precise strike. The void-shattering swordsman plunges his blade deep into the tank bug. So Wei Dao commands the squad to secure the right flank, while the Great Sage rains down fireballs that incinerate the charging swarm, earning a thumbs up from Wei Dao for the impeccable coordination. But the primate does not stop, launching another explosive strike at the remaining enemies, and the sheer force of the blast tears through the bug's heavy plating, leaving the creature defenseless as it crumbles under the sustained assault, which finally changes the senior's tune as he realizes how capable these summons are. So the veteran decides to jump into the fray himself, spinning his dual hammers to build up massive momentum, and he unleashes a spinning vortex of destruction against the nearest bug, slamming his weapon directly into the monster's skull, until the impact obliterates the beast in a shower of debris, showcasing the raw power of his rare berserker class to the rest of the team. After which the senior admits he would have been finished without their timely intervention, though Wei Dao quickly pivots, asking for a small favor in return for his help, prompting the senior to agree without a second thought, so Wei Dao asks him to relay a specific message to the other berserkers, leaving the veteran confused about what exactly he needs to broadcast, while Wei Dao prepares to hold the line alone against the incoming swarm. The veteran questions if Wei Dao can really hold off the entire swarm alone, but Wei Dao just grins and tells him to stop worrying about the casualties, causing the senior to finally concede and follow the plan, taking a deep breath before he turns to rally the rest of the group. Liu Taiju bellows for everyone to abandon the fight immediately, ordering the survivors to sprint toward the south, and the others realize they have no choice but to trust his command, scattering in a frantic rush to escape the encroaching bugs, while Wei Dao signals aims to take over the front line, who begins channeling a massive swirling torrent of hellfire, casting waves of flame that incinerate the lead swarm units, forcing the fleeing group to push even harder as the monsters close in. Yet Aints unleashes a barrage of fireballs that tear through the ranks, leaving the veteran completely floored by the sheer scale of the display. Even as the remaining bugs continue to swarm forward undeterred, Wei Dao taunts the senior, asking if he is finally convinced of his power before he commands Aints to finish them with his ultimate move, sending the skeleton mage surging forward at breakneck speed, who unleashes twin pillars of flame to scorch the earth, and the resulting inferno consumes the entire bug legion in one go. The massive explosions finally subside, leaving the witnesses completely bewildered by the sheer destructive output, as the veteran can hardly believe the entire swarm just vanished, So he immediately tries to recruit Wei Dao for more heavy lifting, claiming he just wants more experience to hit the peak of his second advancement, and Wei Dao agrees to help without breaking a sweat, handing over a tactical map of other nearby strongholds, which Wei Dao accepts with a nod, ready to take on the next set of objectives. Trekking across the barren desert lands by the next day, where he encounters another wave of hostile creatures, triggering a system notification for the successful kill of a level 40 tank bug, followed by the prompt for his third advancement quest, which requires him to reach a beast grade of at least boss level. So he summons his undead army to clear the path forward, marching through the dust toward the next mission. Meanwhile, a new deal is being struck between AI-san and a mercenary, who demands an array core in exchange for his services, offering her company for a month to sweeten the bargain, though the guy knows exactly what he really wants to get out of this. AI-san is absolutely fed up with the chatter, brushing off the talk of grooming her sister for Zion Kun, while Wei Dao drops into the fray to handle the swarm, leaving AI-san to see that the sheer audacity of these men, who are charging headlong toward the mother bug for that array core. Ignoring the obvious danger as they scream about being national heroes, their lines breaking apart as they scramble for the prize, though AI-san is finished playing games and conjures a massive energy orb, launching the destructive blast straight into the chaos where it obliterates the frontline bugs in a single strike. So Wei Dao seizes the moment to launch his own offensive, swinging his massive axe with enough force to shatter the ground. And the resulting impact leaves nothing but dust and wreckage behind, prompting a quick exchange between AI-san and Wei Dao about his imminent Tier 4 advancement, with Wei Dao returning the jab, noting that she is just as ambitious, while the remaining bug swarm continues to surge forward in a panic, feeding the growing mass of the mother bug as it pulses with power, its three-eyed form watching the hatching process with twisted anticipation. Where the creature inside the egg finally prepares to emerge, and the final wave of combatants screams for the kill, diving into the heart of the nest. A brutal melee erupts as the swarm throws itself into the meat grinder, but AI-san notices the bugs are acting like disposable pawns, realizing the mother bug needs to be wiped off the map immediately, while deep inside the nest, the glowing egg pulses with an unsettling life. And the three-eyed guardian waits in twisted, patient anticipation for the birth, as Wei Dao relentlessly tears through the remaining defensive line, causing the guardian to curse the interference as the egg nears its final state. Because the core is already within reach of the encroaching party, yet the Guardian mocks the humans, offering them a quick death for the array core, cackling that their souls will only serve to hasten the child's arrival. So Wei Dao activates his insight spell to scan the high-level threat, revealing the mother bug's boss-grade stats that dwarf the standard enemy ranks, making it clear that the egg is leaking an overwhelmingly tyrannical aura, and AI-san decides to take the initiative, lunging forward with a piercing strike, driving her weapon deep into the eggshell before the creature fully matures, which shatters the containment and forces the premature emergence of the entity, leaving the mother bug to howl in despair as its offspring is exposed, while Wei Dao keeps his focus locked on the data stream, where the newly spawned Lord-grade bug shows stats nearly matching his own, and both fighters brace for the reality that a fully matured version would have been unstoppable. The newborn bug laughs off the mother's survival, claiming its own energy is still insufficient, and with a twisted grin, it sets its sights on consuming its own creator, showing zero hesitation as it demands the mother bug offer up its life force, leaving the parent terrified by the creature's cold, predatory logic, since the offspring insists that only by eating the mother can its own evolution truly advance, which forces the realization that it has birthed a monster it can no longer control. Because within this hive there is only room for one intelligent life to rule supreme, so the new king lunges forward to claim its throne through immediate violence, forcing the surrounding swarm to open fire in a desperate attempt to protect the mother bug. But their energy beams are swatted aside as the king closes the distance, tearing through the defensive line with ruthless, overwhelming physical power, and it reaches the mother, draining the essence from its soul in a single motion, leaving Wei Dao shocked by the sheer speed and explosive force on display, while the king stands over its final prize, demanding the last of the mother's soul, driving its claws deep into the helpless creature's core, as the light fades from the mother bug's eyes, ending the cycle of the hive in a spray of gore, where the entity stands triumphant, having officially evolved into Tier 0 king-grade threat, making it clear to Wei Dao and AI-san that the situation has spiraled far beyond their control, and with the mother dead and a true king born, they have no choice but to retreat. Zion Kun turns his sights on the humans, vowing to consume their souls as well, and the newly crowned king wastes no time, driving his blade straight through a defender, forcing the survivors to scramble away as they realize there is no winning this fight. So they mount their beast and make a desperate break for the nearest stronghold, reaching the safety of the ruins where they finally catch a moment to breathe. Though the group remains anxious, wondering if Wei Dao managed to survive the chaos, until a familiar face arrives on a mount to check on their well-being. And Wei Dao greets the kid with a grin, confirming he made it out in one piece, brushing off the danger like it was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, while the team questions how everyone managed to converge at this exact spot, revealing that the heavy monster presence pushed them all to retreat toward the same coordinates. Yet their relief is short-lived as the threat level spikes, and a massive explosion rocks the landscape, signaling that the stronghold is under fire, throwing everyone into panic as they realize the perimeter has been breached, followed by the grim news that the Allied and Sakura forces have already fallen to the swarm, leaving the team to face the reality that the bug race has returned with a vengeance, as a literal ocean of monsters surges forward to finish what they started, making it clear that their retreat was just a temporary delay, while the vanguard of the hive slams into the remaining defenses with terrifying force, and Zion Kun leads the charge, ready to finish off the stragglers once and for all. The overwhelming bug swarm forces a desperate retreat, but realizing escape is impossible, the team prepares for a final stand, and they choose to fight rather than die running, with Aints taking the lead to hold the vanguard, unleashing a massive army of skeletons to hold the line, while the undead forces engage the bugs in a relentless barrage of fire, turning the battlefield into a meat grinder against the encroaching swarm, as Aisen refuses to be outdone by the show of power, darting forward to strike with her angel's sword, slicing through the defensive chitin of the lead monster, leaving the remaining students in disbelief at their combat prowess. During which Aints directs the skeleton guards to focus their fire, coordinating the undead to systematically dismantle the high-tier tank bugs, and Aints calls for the others to rally behind his position while the onlookers watch in awe at the sheer scale of the summoned army, yet the chaos intensifies as more threats emerge from the wreckage, forcing the group to fend off the incoming tide of beasts, where even the defenders suffer injuries in the brutal close-quarters struggle. And one fighter prepares a final, desperate counterattack, channeling a lethal blast of energy to eliminate the closest target. The pink-haired fighter unleashes a concentrated sphere of raw energy, which intensifies into a blinding pulse of focused destruction, tearing through the bug swarm with surgical precision, as observers realize they are witnessing a Tier 3 expert from the AI family in action, so Aints signals his skeleton summon to follow up with a massive fiery barrage, raining down scorching projectiles across the remaining monsters, until the entire front line detonates in a chain reaction of explosive force. But one of the bugs manages to close the distance to the skeletal summon and sneers at the unexpected presence of such a unique undead beast, before it launches a rapid-fire assault that sends the skeleton spiraling backward through the air, leaving Liu Taiju to shout in alarm as their defensive line takes a critical hit.